a large family, a lot of my time is spent thinking about meals, preparing meals, and making sure that we have nourishing food on the table. Now, only recently do I feel like I don't have all little kids. It's funny because those kind of things just happen really quickly and without you even noticing. I remember years ago realizing that I would have 4 teenagers in the house at one time, and then as one will enter into their 20s, another one will come on deck. And so I'll be having 4 teenagers in our house and possibly some in their 20s as well, and little kids at a time for the foreseeable future. Well, now we are entering into that era where our oldest 3 children are teenagers. So in a couple years, I'll have 4 teenagers, and that just means that I'm finding myself making more and more food because all of these kids are growing. I started noticing it recently with our 3rd child, our first son. As he has become a teenager, he is growing so fast. He's just having these massive growth spurts. And I started noticing that when he started eating more food. So it's a moving target, but nonetheless, there's a lot of food to be made. Whether your family is large or small, you have to be thinking about food all the time. And so I have some tricks and rhythms in my kitchen that really help me to stay on top of the demand of making everyone food all the time. Thankfully, I enjoy being in the kitchen. I love being creative with recipes. I get excited about managing my home and the inventory in the kitchen. And this is something that I've been learning and growing in for the last 18 years as I've been married and became a mother. Today I'm sharing with you some things that you might find me making, some things that will feed our large family and aren't all that difficult. Sometimes there's time for meals that take a little bit more effort, but a lot of times I'm just trying to make those things on repeat that I know how to make, that we are well stocked for. So the first thing I'm making today is a super simple sheet pan. Now on my recent Azure Standard haul, I picked up frozen diced sweet potatoes just because right now with Miriam, she's almost 1, eating a lot of solid food. I like to have something in the meal that she can pick from. Now, she's not picky and I can almost make anything edible for her if I just cut it small enough, but it is nice to have something like sweet potatoes. Normally, I just peel and cut a sweet potato up, but I thought this will be great for a busy night when I need to throw something together really quickly. I can just toss these onto a sheet pan. So that's what I did tonight. My sister Ashley from New Hartford Farm Co. raises beef, and she has these great high quality hot dogs, and she has a bunch of them. And so I keep asking her, hey, can I get some more from you? Because they're so easy. They can thaw fast. If I didn't plan ahead to get them in the refrigerator, I can put them in some hot water long enough to make them soft enough that I can dice them up or cut them in rounds, put them on a sheet pan with some olive oil, some vegetables, salt, pepper, some seasonings, whatever, call it a day. And that makes for such an easy meal. Now, I will say, of course, when doing frozen sweet potatoes, this will make them a bit mushier. So if you have the time to put in a little extra effort, of course, I also keep whole sweet potatoes on hand. That's great. But it's really nice to have things like this in the freezer at the ready. You can throw together a healthy meal without any effort. Sheet pan dinners are always the perfect thing for those kind of nights. Now, this next meal is kind of the exact opposite of that. I am making lasagna from scratch. Now, I'm not making the noodles from scratch, although that's something that we enjoy in our family too. I have a 5-gallon bucket of durum wheat, which makes perfect pasta, but tonight I just didn't have it in me for that kind of effort. It's super simple though. Even some of my kids can do it by themselves. So you just mill up durum wheat, add some eggs, and if you have the pasta roller cutter attachments for the KitchenAid, it is fairly simple. But I have some high quality pasta on hand, but what I don't have on hand is any ricotta cheese or a bunch of tomato sauce or pizza sauce or whatever. I do have quite a few tomatoes that my friend brought over from her garden, so I'm going to use that and some fresh onions and garlic and olive oil and herbs to make a nice pasta sauce. So for this, I'm just sauteing all the vegetables with some olive oil to give it some great flavor. I'll add some salt and some fresh basil from my front porch garden, and then I will just let that simmer. In my home and in my kitchen, I take the time to source high quality ingredients, to cook from scratch as much as possible, and I want to be sure that what I am cooking on is also non-toxic and health supporting for our family. That's why I want to tell you about today's video sponsor, Caraway. Caraway is a non-toxic kitchenware brand. Their ceramic coating is made without PTFE, PFOA, PFAs and other forever chemicals. Caraway's non-toxic coating is third-party tested and verified, and Caraway tests for over 600 forever chemicals to make sure it is not in their coating, which gives me a lot of peace of mind using their non-stick cookware. We have a lot of cooks in our home now that we have several teenagers and many hands in the kitchen. It's nice having something non-toxic that is also non-stick, especially for newer cooks. They can get those slide off the pan, eggs, everything comes off clean and easy. All products are super functional and made from high quality materials. The convenience of non-stick, but also something that isn't going to introduce microplastics and forever chemicals. I've been using Caraway to make a lot of my staple recipes, such as sourdough pancakes. I really love the non-stick surface for that. And when my younger cooks are making pancakes, it's nice because a lot of times cast iron is hard to regulate the temperature on things like that. But Caraway also makes some very lovely cast iron products as well that are enamel coated, cast iron made modern, which I've also been loving in our kitchen. Because their cast iron is coated with nonstick enamel, they're much easier to handle. There's no seasoning required and they can be cleaned with regular soap and water. Most enameled cast iron has 2 to 3 layers of enamel, but Caraway's has 5, making them super durable, plus they offer a lifetime warranty. I'd recommend getting the cookware set like I did. It comes with the saute pan, fry pan, Dutch oven, and saucepan, plus lids for all of them, a lid holder, and a magnetic pan rack for storage. This saves you up to 20% versus buying the pans individually. Caraway's cookware set is already discounted 20% as a bundle. Plus, you can stack my code BOOM10 and get an additional 10% off. You can use my code to save on all of their products site-wide, and right now they're running a limited time sweepstakes where every dollar you spend equals 1 entry to win $100,000 in cash or a full kitchen remodel. I will leave the link down in the description box below. Again, thank you so much, Caraway, for sponsoring today's video. Now, it might sound intimidating, but making homemade ricotta cheese is really simple. We have a great milk source. Someone locally milks Jerseys. It's very delicious, creamy milk. I can get 10 gallons a week because she has it in such abundance. So that's just an excellent arrangement for me. I send my teenagers to go get the milk. I mean, what could be easier? We are thinking about getting a dairy cow here. We're actually working on fencing right now. But oh man, it's just so easy when I have such a great source, just so close by. But anyways, because of that, I like to make the simpler dairy products at home. Now, cheddar and even mozzarella, although it's not that difficult to make, it just is an extra step. I usually just have those in the refrigerator, but some dairy products are just so easy, it doesn't even make sense to buy them. So for example, yogurt, milk kefir, and in today's case, ricotta cheese. With ricotta, all you really have to do is heat the milk, add some vinegar, let it separate into curds and whey, and strain it off in a tea towel or a flour sack towel. If I find that it still looks milky after I do that, I just add a bit more vinegar and it separates even more, and I'm left with whey. Now, in today's case, I needed to add a bit of extra liquid to the sauce in order to not have to pre-boil the noodles. That's one of my tricks, is instead of pre-boiling lasagna noodles, I just add extra liquid to the dish, and when it's baking with the foil on top, covered there in the oven, the noodles will cook without having to be pre-boiled. So I noticed that my sauce, when I was putting the lasagna together, was a bit thick, which is lovely for pizza or if you did pre-boil the noodles, but it needed a little bit more liquid. So I just added the whey right back to the dish. So I used that milk to make ricotta, and then I also used the leftover whey that I strained off after making the ricotta to thin down the sauce and make the noodles cook. I just love it when I can use everything up. There's something about having the raw materials and the resources to make something and transforming it and using everything. I just love that. That is really the key for me in the kitchen. And I know I talk about this all the time, but it really is so important to just be well stocked and to have some skills and knowledge on how to make something. So for example, if you have buckets of whole grain and you have the knowledge on how to make that into bread dough, rolls, pizza dough, biscuits, pie crust, whatever that may be, then you always have your kitchen well stocked with all of those things just by keeping 5-gallon buckets of whole grains. If you keep yourself well stocked with milk and you know how to quickly and easily, without having to look through a recipe or just learn while you're in a busy kitchen moment, how to make yogurt, ricotta, even mozzarella cheese, this means that by having milk in your refrigerator, you always have all of those things. And that's important, especially if you, like me, don't just live 5 minutes from the grocery store. I can get there in about 25 minutes, but typically for me, it's easier just to take the time to make those things that I already know how to make, that I have all the raw materials for, than to make a run to the store. That same principle can be applied all throughout your kitchen. Now, I do try to keep my job easier by being well stocked with things like mozzarella cheese because they last so long. They're in the bottom drawer of the refrigerator, they're out of the way, they'll keep for a year. Not that we ever have it that long because we go through so much. And then the pantry full of canned goods and condiments. But being well stocked with those staples, having a freezer full of meat. If I have my pantry filled with those staple canned goods and I have milk, meat, eggs, and cheese, and some frozen vegetables, lots of spices, pastas, rice, barley, things like that, I have everything I need to make such a wide variety of meals for my family, even without meal planning. Today, I didn't plan to make lasagna. I had all the things to pull that together. Another thing we like to make regularly in our home is pizza. I like it because it's versatile. You can put such a wide variety of things that you have in your pantry, in your fridge, onto a pizza. You can adapt it seasonally. I made some sourdough, half whole grain, half all-purpose pizza dough. And I'm making a couple of fun varieties today. So just some basic cheese pizzas for the younger kids. And then we made some pesto with the basil from our front porch container garden. That's something that we have in abundance right now, and some fresh tomatoes. I also made one that pretty much just Luke and I will like, with fig jam, some bacon, jalapenos, goat cheese, and mozzarella. Pizza night's always a winner because you can customize it for if you have pickier eaters. You can make some fun ones for the adults or the older kids. We always enjoy it. And again, I always have my sourdough starter going. I have those buckets of grain. I keep a lot of all-purpose flour as well. Just make sure that what I have can turn into something like pizza. We like that. Another thing that I have become very comfortable with making in my home from scratch is whole grain tortillas. I especially love them in this recipe because it is so forgiving. So this is kind of like a burrito casserole. The idea was to take all the things that go in burritos, but make it easier to serve to my family. I always say that there are certain foods that are harder to make up front, but then easier to serve. And then there are certain things that are opposite of that. So tacos, so darn easy. But if you have a lot of little kids, I don't know if your kids are like my kids, they get kind of frustrated when they pick up a taco or a burrito full of ground beef and it spills out the bottom, which, as you know, if you don't hold it right, that's going to happen. So I sometimes like to make certain things that I know will be just really easy to serve. Everybody gets a big slice of it. It goes on their plate. They can eat it with a fork and it's easy. Another example would be pizza. Maybe a little bit more work up front, easier to serve. Same with lasagna. Harder up front, but easy to serve and a great leftover. So that's another thing about this burrito casserole. If you make 2 of them or 4 of them or whatever, however large your family is, and you have some leftover, it's really easy to pop back into the oven to warm up for a leftover versus all the different parts of a burrito, which we do, tons of tacos and burritos. They're harder to put away if you have leftovers because you put away each individual thing, and then they're harder to get back out and heat up. So that was my idea with this burrito casserole, is to just just kind of layer it up and then make it really easy to serve to everyone. I also like that if you are a brand new tortilla maker and you're having a hard time rolling them out nice and flat, making them very pliable and nice, or let's say that you are trying to make tortillas and you mess them up and you're frustrated, you can turn them into a burrito casserole because they really don't have to be perfect. There's another recipe over on my website, farmhouseonboone.com. It's a ground beef taco skillet where you put the tortillas into the skillet with the ground beef. It's kind of the same idea. It's like just kind of putting the tortillas into the meal as opposed to trying to roll them up. A great thing to do if you are brand new to making tortillas and you're afraid of wasting your ingredients and all the work and the time that you put into them. So this is great because they don't have to be perfect. I'm just layering in some ground beef. I love to season it with the Redmond Real Salt taco seasoning. I also have some sweet corn from somebody's garden. My mom gave it to me, but I can't remember. I think it was from my sister Ashley's garden. I'm pretty sure. So I just cut that right off and put it in instead of serving corn on the cob, which my kids also like, but this was another thing that I could add to this burrito skillet. Some onions, some cheese, salsa. This made for a really great and easy meal. I love looking into the refrigerator, seeing what I have and seeing if something jumps out at me. A lot of times you can think of it in the categories of like Italian, Mexican, Asian of some sort. So if you look in and you see, oh, I have some avocados I need to use up. Oh, I have some corn, I'm starting to see a theme emerge here. I can make some from scratch tortillas, get out that cheddar cheese, a can of black beans. I always have ground beef and make this come together. I am not a meal planner. I know I've shared that with you all, but still we are able to make meals like this on the fly by knowing how to make a handful of things and by not being a perfectionist. So if I don't have everything I need to make this the best burrito casserole ever, I know that it would be good enough. Even if I just had cheese, ground beef, and whole grains to make those tortillas, it would still be a sufficient high protein meal, and then throw on whatever else you have. So we always have a lot of salsa in the pantry. That's something that I can use to flavor and season and make it more delicious and have some vegetables in there. Another major category that makes its way to our table very often, probably once a week, is soup of some kind. And again, I love soup because you can look into your refrigerator and your pantry and you can almost add anything to it. I like to take it in a few different directions. So one would be like a Mexican direction, sweet corn, black beans, onions, peppers, ground beef, even chicken, garlic, all great. Or I could go in like a creamy, vegetable-y type of direction. So carrots, celery, garlic, onion, or garlic and onion go in just about every soup. Maybe add some cream to that, or even some cream cheese like I'm going to do today. Or it could be like a broccoli cheddar, or it could be a soup that isn't creamy at all, adding all the vegetables that you have in your freezer, pantry, fridge, and maybe some barley and a clear broth, maybe some stew meat, more of like a beef stew type of thing. They're just so versatile. You can add whatever you want and it will likely taste good. Even if you mix up like all the three things I just said, it would still likely taste good. Add enough salt and pepper, maybe some herbs. Today I am making sort of a creamy Southwest soup. This recipe is over on the blog, but I am following it loosely. I had some chicken in the crock pot all morning. I just threw it in there with a jar of salsa and some salt and walked away. And I didn't really know what I was going to do with that chicken, but I already had some broth made in the refrigerator. I mentioned in a previous video that I like to keep a lot of high quality cream cheese in the refrigerator. It's another thing that lasts a really long time. So if you want to be well stocked, but you're worried about wasting, that's the kind of thing that I don't worry about buying a ton of, because before it goes bad, I'm going to find a use for it. And if it's getting close to that or on the verge, I would just make a big cheesecake, which is delicious and high protein. But I love keeping cream cheese because it's a great way to add protein and flavor to a soup. I can bulk up a soup with something like shredded cheese or cream cheese. For a little probiotic boost, I'm also going to add some sauerkraut on top of this soup. It adds a lot of flavor and a great texture. Chips also add that lovely texture, not as much the health benefit, but delicious as well. All right, well, I hope that I gave you some ideas for what to make in your own home. Even if you don't have a large family, you can make things in smaller quantities. My goal is to teach you how to get meals on the table without it being overly stressful or serious or something that has to be meticulously planned. It can really be simple. Don't forget, you can use my code BOOM10 to get 10% off your Caraway bundle, which is already discounted at 20%, so you can stack those. And right now they're running a limited time sweepstakes where every dollar you spend equals one entry to win $100,000 in cash or a full kitchen remodel. I'll leave the link below. Thank you so much for stopping by our farmhouse.